Good evening, good evening, good evening. I have to say again, I just love that intro, Lamont. Thank you so much, Lamont G. Good evening once again, family, and thank you so much for being with us tonight. Before we go any further, do me a favor, please, if you will, subscribe on YouTube to Monica May Communications. And if you're on Facebook, please like and share. The more likes, the more shares, you know the whole social media thing. I'm Monica May, and it's a pleasure to be with you. You know, I always say that every time the polls are open, you are to be there. The 2024 election, though, ooh, baby, is so crucial. And I know we say it all the time, but trust me, it is so key for us to get out there and vote. But it's so important for us to have conversations like tonight's discussion leading up to it. That's why we have a show like we have tonight. And we're going to take a deep dive with the experts, Jasmine Burney-Clark with Equal Ground and UCF professor, Dr. Amanda Wilkerson. Tonight, we're talking about how to get the Black vote activated. And for this upcoming election, activation is going to be key. Let me introduce these wonderful, brilliant ladies to you. Dr. Amanda Wilkerson is a scholar who examines academia and acknowledges K through 20 student achievement. She always talks about measurements, and you'll find out why. She's a tireless advocate for equity and excellence in higher ed, and she seeks to build a better world for all of us and institutions through cooperation, collaboration, and community engagement. That's Dr. Amanda for you. Jasmine Burney-Clark has been on with us before. She is the founder and director of Equal Ground, which is a civic engagement organization. She's dedicated her personal and professional career to social and electoral justice across the state of Florida. It's a huge job, but this itty bitty mama, she handles it. She has a wonderful staff too. She's the founder again of the Educational Fund and the Action Fund, Florida's preeminent Black-led, community-centered civic engagement organization. So we're going to start with you tonight, Jasmine. I want you to tell us more the real work of Equal Ground and how we can get involved.
First, thank you so much for having me this evening and always amplifying the work that I do at Equal Ground and the work of social justice and voting rights across the state of Florida. So I'm honored to be here. So Equal Ground Education Fund, which is a C3 organization, so we're a nonprofit. We were founded in May of 2019. And just to give you a little bit of background, we were founded shortly after the passage of rights restoration, where 1.4 million returning citizens or formerly incarcerated people receive their automatic rights restoration to vote. Shortly after that restoration occurred, and Florida voters, more than 60% of them said that they believed in second chances. Our governor of the state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, took office in January of 2019 and created a reversal effect by introducing a poll tax that would essentially slow down and create a chilling effect by not allowing returning citizens that automatic right, but creating another hurdle for them to get past. And I, working in Florida politics at that time, roughly about 10 years, thought about what it looked like to have a Black-led organization that focused on voter turnout 365 days a year, focused on voter education 365 days a year, not just the day before Election Day or a few weeks or even a month before, but year-round voter education, and decided to establish an organization called Equal Ground that allowed for us to be looked at and recognized as an equal entity in this state that could raise money and that could staff and could work with other organizations and coalitions across the state to ensure that Black voices were centered in our democracy.
That 365 is so key. We just left, the three of us just left a meeting that Jasmine convened at her office. And you can tell them more about that in just a moment if you choose to. But I will say that the one thing that I think was key that we came out of that is that 365 is monumental.
Yeah.
Because today's voter does not believe in that. It's not that they don't believe in democracy, but the pursuit of it, we see it from different prospects, and that brings me to you, Dr. Amanda. She was the lead researcher on a paper that, I have read, I have had young people look through it. and they really, really get where you're coming from. So I want to talk about the other Black voter. Who is that other Black voter that you are referring to?
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm honored to join the likes of Jasmine Burney-Clark and you to have this sort of critical conversation. And I will tell you that for me and the research that I conducted, the other Black voter were Florida HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, the students there, because I wanted to highlight them in a way where we aren't just seeing them as educational institutions or just as engines of upward mobility for folks like Jasmine and I who graduated from rival institutions here in the state of Florida. But HBCUs are really pivotal in shaping first the Black middle class and also shaping Black leaders who go on to lead all across the United States in different forms, as far as up into the White House with our dear Vice President who is a graduate of Howard University. And so, what got me curious about the other Black voter is that when I think about voters, oftentimes I know that people don't consider Black voters. And when we ask the question of who are Black voters, by many measures, people don't think of youth Black voters. And for myself and my research team, we looked at Black youth voters between the ages of 18 to 29. And so, in looking at this particular population, it became very evident to us that their access and their right and their rate of voting and being politically engaged looked very different than what we were reading about in the history books and what we were seeing in terms of empirical information, meaning research based information. In fact, most times when Black youth voters are talked about, it's really discussing turnout, go out and vote. But what we looked at is something critically different. We looked at their socialization. And all that means, Monica, is how they develop their beliefs and their values so they can become engaged. And this was the key catalyst for helping us understand how the other Black voter can be defined, because I think that there are categories and levels to who Black voters are. And now I think we have a solid way of understanding and constructing who Black voters are in the state of Florida, at least. And we're looking to do that nationally.
This paper was so interesting, and we'll put in the chat before we leave where they can find this information, because I think it should be required reading for every single person.
Mm-hmm.
But I always ask Dr. Amanda this one question. We're looking at HBCU students, but what about the student that did not make it to college, but is still of voting age and still needs to be a part of this process? How do we reach them?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. Oftentimes, I've said that youth voters are evolving in who they vote for and why they vote. But messaging and outreach methods, they really haven't. We're stuck in the past. One of the critical things that my research revealed is a gap in terms of messaging. And I think that when we head into 2024 elections, we can't afford for this disconnect between the evolution of young voters and the strategies that are used to engage them. I know that your question refers to looking at all youth voters, and I think that that is a important wake up call. But if I could just ground this point, the reason why we looked at youth voters who are have some form of a post-secondary education is because research indicates that they are more likely to turn out and vote. So we really wanted to deal with likely voters, and we wanted the information we got from them to really resonate with those who are inspired to work around messaging and organizing tactics, so they can do it in a more dynamic way with a very pivotal group of voters. Because I think in 2024, given everything that we're about to deal with, we're confronting the fact that we are going to have the same candidates likely running for office that we had in 2020, that we really can't afford. And I say this with a lot of consternation. We really cannot afford to miss the mark when it comes to Black youth voters, Black educated youth voters, and youth voters in general.
Mm-hmm. Through the work of Equal Ground, Jasmine, you have learned what about the Black voter?
Oh, that's a really great question. And oftentimes you hear people say Black folks are not a monolith.
Mhm.
But what does that really mean? Honestly, we don't always vote the same. We don't make the same decisions. You can't find us in the same places. However, we do all need some of the same basic necessities,
Good.
and that is healthcare, education, that is the right to vote, the right to choose who we love, the rights and abilities to do what we want to do with our bodies without interference from anyone. And what I'm learning is that this process is complicated, and how we access those rights are also complicated.
Yeah.
How we determine what is a priority for each of us is also different. Not as always complicated, it's just different.
Mhm.
And we have to be honest about that. And we have to be prepared to have conversations where we meet people where they are. And it may stretch us, but if we're taking on the role of being leaders in our community, that also means that we've got to sacrifice a few things in that process. So I've learned a lot about myself in working exclusively with Black voters throughout the state of Florida, but I've also been taught a lot about Black voters. A lot of our work in our early years really allowed me to sit and listen and learn. And I'm still listening and I'm still learning. It's from year 1 to year 5 that we're entering in. We have revamped how we organize. We have revamped what our priorities are as an organization. We thought we would exclusively focus on voter turnout when actually there were policies we needed to address before we even got to the ballot box. So we
Mhm.
had to take a few steps back and determine, how do we address what's happening at the head before we get anywhere else in this state. So each year there's a new layer that I think we are either shedding or peeling back and learning about how to do this work, but it's only adding to how we make this process just a little bit easier and better, not only for the people who are voting in the next election, but we're thinking about generations from now. We don't
Mhm.
want this to just be one cycle or one generation. We're thinking about generations beyond us.
Both Amanda and I are snapping like we're in, a speak easy or something like that,
Yeah.
because this is the key issues. These are the key issues, and we're hitting them tonight.
Yeah.
If you are just coming on, we say thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, on YouTube, please, please, please go ahead and just subscribe to our channel. It's Monica May Communications, and on Facebook, we want you to like and share it, and just let it go. Just let it flow. Let it flow. Let it flow. Our experts tonight, and we're going to call them that because that is who they are. First of all, they're women. Second of all, they're Black women. Third of all, they are experts in their areas of civic engagement and, of course, of rocking the youth vote, understanding the mindset of people in a certain age category. One of the things that Dr. Amanda does is she delves deep with empirical data, and she's able to back up everything that she says. And I love that. This is a first for us. I know that Jasmine does a lot of data collecting as well and is able to regenerate that to get to the next point and strip that layer or go in a different direction. Numbers don't lie. And numbers here in Orange County have been showing that we are missing the mark. We're losing voters
Mm.
each election.
Yes.
There are fewer and fewer people going out. And I know we don't have that crystal ball to be able to say why, but the apathy that I think is emerging in our community is something that needs to be regarded,
Mhm.
and we got to figure out ways to work with that, not work around it, but find out why.
Right.
And Amanda, have you found through your research why that apathy is, this distrust of the political process is there? It's been evident in Black people for a long time, but so much so now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Here's something I really want to piggyback on a very important point that Jasmine brought up
So,
about doing it for more than just the election cycle. So here's a striking revelation when it comes to Black people in general. Political socialization is severely understudied. Why? Because the focus is always so narrowly on concentrating on turnout and voting. I am not suggesting that we don't have that focus. I am merely echoing what Jasmine put out there, which is yes, It has to be turnout, voting, and a prolonged engagement in the community with folks beyond just the discourse of vote for this candidate. In my humble opinion, and based on the research that I've conducted, it's really a deficit minded approach in terms of only looking at voting and only looking at turnout. It's a deficit minded approach that I believe critically overlooks how people develop over time as a voter. So we have to get rid of this idea that it's a one and done. We turn you out this time, can't figure out how to turn you out the next time, because we don't have staying power. And this is where equal ground, I really believe, fortifies the need for us to stay in constant communication. But above and beyond that mere statistic, I think that individuals form their political identities and convictions based on how much they are interacted with politically. So if you touch it one or two times, that's not a lot of development that we can measure going on. And to me, if I can just slow my thoughts down a bit because they're all racing in my head, I don't really believe that it's just about numbers. Now, of course, I'm pretty sure political folks who are looking at it and be, oh, yes, it is about numbers. This is how, I mean, a part of the conversation we were having was discussing numbers and return on investment and how you make those, financial decisions in terms of reaching out to the community. But, one thing, Monica, that I really believe it's also about, and I think that your work does a good job of seeing this, is the narratives, the stories, the experiences. All of these things shape our political consciousness, and it helps us with understanding the discourse of turning somebody's values and beliefs, or understanding their values and belief, and how they turn it into engagement and action.
You know what? And thank you for that, Amanda.
Sure.
Jasmine mentioned something key in her introduction, and even before we began tonight's episode. Our producer asked you to introduce yourself, and you were key on spotting or giving reference to Amendment 4. And I think back to how the workers from Amendment 4, from Florida Restoration Rights Coalition, went about getting that million or so names on the help me with that word, on their yes.
Mm-hmm.
What if we did something like that and just really went door to door to find out what you need, what you want? It's almost like the Bruno Mars. What you doing? I would really like, I would really like us to focus on the voter. And if we focus on the voter and their needs, we think it's one thing. Suppose they told us something totally different. And suppose then we could match them with a politician that is really, really speaking that language. I think that politicians run to run, but they don't really, really interact to run. They don't really know what their constituents want. They go a couple of weeks before, what can you learn about me in just a spot on, but if you're spending time, even before you announce the fact that you're going to run, what if we did it that way? What if we really, really intentionally got to know people? Wouldn't that be different?
And that's the key, right? Is intentionality. Candidates, before they even get to your door, there is a data equation or system that they have used to determine how your door is the door that they are going to come to in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You are given a score in a computer system that says you are either more likely to do something, whether that's vote or vote by a particular way, or you're less likely to vote and or less likely to participate in a particular way. I've yet to have a conversation with you, but data has already told me, here's who you are, here's what you do, and here's how you do it. And it could be completely inaccurate because the computer told me that. And they based it off of the last time you voted, which could have been 2 years or 4 years prior. Circumstances in life could have essentially changed.
Absolutely.
Your zip code could have changed. There are a number of different factors that could have shifted in your life since the last time that computer model was created. And I understand that we need those systems and we need those tools. But outside of the election cycle, people still exist the other days of the year. And
Yes.
life is still happening and things are still happening in our community throughout the entire year. And so that again is why we exist 365 days. We make the sacrifice to ensure that we have staff who are readily available to go into communities to talk about issues, address issues, and we allow the community to also inform what a lot of our agenda is and what their needs are from us. Community partners come to us and tell us we need X, Y, and Z. Can you provide it or can you direct us to someone who can? And that is essentially what could also happen, even if you're a candidate who has won your race, you should be staffed in a way that allows for your staff to continue to do the organizing and the conversation. I think Congressman Frost does a phenomenal job at this. He won his race, but never ended his campaign. He is still out there. He has an organizing team that is still out in the community, having conversations, attending events, knocking on doors, and helping other candidates win their races as well. So he also isn't just prioritizing voters in his district. He's thinking about the whole in this process.
And he's thinking about tomorrow as well.
Yes.
And that's the key. So that means that he won't be one and done.
Right.
He was the least likely thought about candidate, but however, he hit everything on the head. He hit it all. And he, like you said, he continues to do it. And that's where the digital messaging skepticism comes about that Dr. Amanda talks about. Let's hear a little bit more about that from your research.
Well, essentially, what happened is we wanted to really go beyond the surface and explore what motivates people to connect to a message, and in particular, the participants who were a part of our study. And I will tell you, the very best way to describe it is like ordering somebody Uber Eats that they didn't know was coming to them, sending it because you know exactly where they live to their door, and they never open the door to get the food. And when they do open the door, it's just like, what is this and why is it here? But the food is old and crusty. What does that signify? One, that people want enriching experiences when you contact them politically, that your messaging has to matter to them and it has to be delivered to them in a way where they will receive it. So the fallacy with social media is that we know that digital natives, people who have always had access to the internet, they do all of their most of their networking online through their digital platforms, right? That they live in these spaces, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, Twitter, X. And yet they don't want to be bothered in these spaces with your messaging, right? So then we have to go beyond just merely making sure that we have the right vehicle to send them the information. We have to really think about our approach and understand the full complexity of, is the messaging mattering? Is there an impact and not just an impression? And I believe a lot of statisticians who do political polling, they include impressions, which is if you just click on it, if you look at it for 30 seconds, but they don't measure impact. And that's very different. If we measured impact, we'd see we're not making one at all. But then how do you explain someone spending to the tune of $23 million? And that's not just an arbitrary number, Monica. I'm pretty sure Jasmine could attest to it. But the last two candidates, presidential candidates in 2020, spent combined $23 million here in the state of Florida. So how do you spend that much money and you're not making an impact, but you get to tell people it's an impression? We really have to understand, again, the full complexity of how we use messaging and whatever vehicles we're using to reach and make an impact with the voters. And the other thing that I think that youth voters really, besides not wanting to be bothered with political messaging online, is how we message to them. I wrote a report recently, an article recently, and I talked about the vice president, how she was going around and she was really having these conversations about, being civically engaged and using your right to vote. And I thought to myself, man, love her. but she is an uninvited guest on these campuses in the sense that the people that she's trying to attract and say, come and teach us about how to vote. They also don't want to spend an hour listening to you. They want to be engaged in a way where it's short burst of information and the information is continually flowing to them. But they are absorbing the information and you will accept when they feel like the information isn't working for them. They have critiques of it, they're championing it, and I think that that looping of the feedback between how they feel about the information and the way you give it to them is non-existent politically because we still use formats where it's 45 minutes. Students aren't being reached. They don't want to sit in the auditorium. Talk to them on the yard. Talk to them. Jasmine said something very important. Meet them where they're at. And those are the sentiments that we found in the participants that we surveyed.
So again, we have about 4 minutes. Amanda, you always bring up stuff that requires more than 4 minutes for rebuttal in the next phases of it. So that means that you all have to come back in the last few moments, 2 minutes apiece. How can we bridge the understanding gaps? And one thing I will say, Jasmine deals a lot with policy. How can we make Floridians understand the importance of understanding these policies that our legislators are doing on our behalf? Yeah, right.
If Equal Ground does nothing else, we do voter education. That is our main bread and butter as an organization. We are known for disseminating information, but also breaking it down in a way that anyone can understand what is happening. And we do it rapidly because we are currently in a 60-day legislative session right now. It ends in the month of March. And we are seeing more than 3,000 bills be introduced through this legislature. And it is mind-boggling. So we have created training programs like Take the Lead, a Black political leadership training series that offers 2 tracks, an intermediate and a advanced option for you to understand the legislative process, and then to also be able to participate in that legislative process. And then if you're like, I don't want to go through the training, just tell me what to do, come to Tallahassee. My staff and I are there every single week. We are taking people to committee meetings. We're explaining to you what's happening. And then on February 7th, we're taking busloads of people from across the state with us for a day in Tallahassee. And you're saying, well, what does the day do? It gets you started. It's an introduction to the process. It gets you in a place or a room where you may have gone to a FAMU football game or a homecoming, but didn't know that the Capitol was just 3 minutes down the road. So let's start somewhere with that voter education process. But we have all sorts of tools that are available. Our social media is also another great place to find a lot of this information in a very succinct way. And then finally, our newsletter, which comes out every Monday at 11 a.m., is a super easy read on what is currently happening in the legislature right now. Anyone can take that, duplicate it, offer it up to any group or organization you're a part of, and utilize it as information that's incredibly valuable to understand what's happening right now.
Do you all come out and speak to civic organizations or just, homeowners associations or just, groups of people that we can galvanize?
We travel the state and we can come to you virtually. Small groups, large groups, church groups, youth groups.
And
Contact us.
How do we reach you?
We'll be there.
How do we reach you, Jazz?
You can reach me on all social media platforms at Equal Ground FL. That's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. And then you can also email me at jasmine@equal-ground.com. And then our website is also equal-ground.com. So those are all the ways to reach me, both on social and via email and our website.
That's perfect. Amanda, how do we get to be able to download The Other Black Voter?
It's very easy. You can download The Other Black Voter by just emailing me and I'll send you the link. You don't have to worry about downloading it. I don't want people to have to go through the trouble of looking for it on Rutgers or the University of Central Florida. But you should know that, again, this work is being held in high esteem by researchers across the nation, and HBCU presidents have reached out to me about this work. I'll tell you this: I'm very fortunate, and I don't say this lightly, to also be in a company, not just on this platform, speaking alongside Jasmine, but working with her. One of the things that I am really, really interested in is making sure that we have a long-term investment when we go into communities and we talk about civic engagement. And she's doing the work. So I'm a part of her team as well. I'm always begging to be a part of Jasmine's team. If you ever gone and work with her, you know what I'm talking about because her work is par excellent. But you can get it by emailing me. And I think the other thing that I want to add regarding your question is I tend to critique the system a lot. I know that we're going to look at voters and have our critiques of them, whether they be young or old, black or white. But I think that this should be a wake up call to those who are organizing voters, who are spending money in our community, that it should signal to them that they just can't come in, drop into our communities, do what they want to do to inspire their candidate to feel like they're making an impact so they can win, and really do nothing that's dynamic and pivotal for the voters that they're asking to go out and vote. We really cannot afford to have systems that just take people's vote and don't do anything else to extend the conversation or the relationship with this population. And so I think this year, and I'm very excited to see that you have factions of voters who are pushing back on this idea that you just can't come to our community, give us a fish dinner, talk to our pastor, and not talk to us. What is that about? But that we are really thinking differently about how we engage them. And so I'm all about saying to the system, wake up, because every time you come to the state of Florida in particular and you deal with you voters and you're not doing it in the right way, I'm gonna write about it, because we have to bring these issues to the light so they don't continue to do it. Because normally, I don't know about you all, but normally the way that they try to get our vote, I said this to Monica before, is they go to the black church. But what does that look like after COVID-19 with my population of participants who were brunchers to begin with, right? So we really have to look at this very differently and demand. Don't come to us and ask us to do a job and not give us money. Don't come to us and ask us to do research and not be invested in what it takes to deliver on what we are giving you. So those are my concluding thoughts.
I'm going to wrap us up on that note. Don't forget, we do brunch at CB Bistro. Okay, we are having brunch this Sunday, 2 seatings, 12 and 2 p.m. How to get the Black vote activated for the upcoming election. That was our topic tonight. Our guest, thank you so much, Dr. Amanda Wilkerson. Dr. A or Dr. Amanda or Dr. Wilkerson is a UCF professor. You can reach out to her, and also Jasmine Burney-Clark with Equal Ground. Please, again, do me a favor. Subscribe on YouTube to Monica Main Communications. And if you're watching us on Facebook, please like and share. We have more of these deep dive conversations. You've got to be a part in order to get motivated and to move forward. So again, we thank you so much for being on with us on Monica May's One Take Live. Have a wonderful evening.